Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear, and this is a hologram microcosm. No, it is not a control surface from the Nostromo. This is an effects pedal. It does looping, it does granular, it does delays, it does filtering and pitch modulation. It's really a multi-effect. It's really a multi-tool. It does so many different things. And whenever I try to learn a new piece of gear, I like to just sit down with it in the manual, and if it's an effects pedal, I'll sit down with a keyboard I know well, and I will try and step through as much of the manual as I can and try and understand it completely, and through that, hopefully, I'll find out what it's good at. But I didn't really feel that with a microcosm. I was getting sounds that I like, sure, but I was surprised. There was much more coming back than I was throwing into it. And normally that's not a place I like to be working from. I like to know what's about to come back. And I like to be impressed more than I like to be surprised. And even when it's different modes, especially before I had it, I expect it to be different flavors or different iterations of granular delay. And I thought that's what the name was in reference to. Microcosm, like you're zooming in on your sounds. The nuance of an instant magnified. It's the sort of things I was writing before it got here. That's what I wanted to talk about. So I expected to be talking about the granular thing. And some of the modes do certainly do that. And a lot of the controls seem to be based around that core. But the pedal does so much more, and I think the name might have another meaning, and I'll tell you that when we get closer to the end of the video. This video, which I have titled, How to Actually Use the Microcosm. That's this guy. Hologram reached out, they sent me an email asking if I was interested in the microcosm, and I have a tendency, realistically I have a problem, where I want to have my own hands-on experience of anything that I see become part of the, synth YouTube zeitgeist. And the microcosm is something I'd seen a lot but had never had my hands on. And I said, yes, please. I'd love to try the microcosm. So Hologram sent this over, but you know the drill. They do not see this before it goes out, and they do not get to tell me what to say. And my first idea was to go through every mode, to explain in detail what the controls in every mode were going to do. And as soon as I sat with it for some amount of time, it was so clear to me that that was the wrong choice. I feel that the microcosm wants to be approached in a specific way, and in service of that, I will be presenting it in a specific way. I will give you one long how to approach it that's sort of pretty high concept. What are the controls going to do at any moment? In any mode, what are the controls going to help me accomplish? That will be the meat of the video. If you guys know me, you know I'm technical, and that should be no surprise, but that's where I think I can provide the most value, is a technical base. And that's a little bit at odds with the microcosm because I think it's best experienced by exploring. But the sort of compromise I've come to with myself, I feel like stepping through in complete detail might be undermining to the experience of sitting and using it. But there is an element of a base level understanding, and there is an element of this rules for engagement, of this how to explore, what do the controls do, that I think it can be very helpful. And it can save a lot of frustration. And I wrap up with a sort of really quick how to approach modes that you aren't familiar with, because I think that's a big part of using the microcosm. Great, and instead of my written conclusion, I will just be presenting a tangent that I went on while I was filming that I think better summarizes my feelings towards the microcosm and does a better job of summarizing this than my written conclusion did. So, no more. Let us move to the table. Alrighty, before we get anywhere, we need to do something very boring first. We need to enter global configuration by holding these two buttons, the shift or subdivision button and the phrase looper, for a few seconds. Then all these lights will move around. And the way you change settings in here, you wiggle a knob. That brings you to a different option, and then you scroll through your choices on the selector here. So the two things we need to make sure we have set up right are the two input configuration controls, and that is on activity, and this determines mono or stereo input. So far on the left, one light is mono. On the right, two lights is stereo. The mini log is a mono out, a monaural out. So I leave it on mono, and I select that, and then mix. And so there's two options here. The left, these lights are so bright, the leftmost LED flashing is instrument level, and then one to the right is line level. Instrument level would be for guitars with pickups or electric pianos with pickups, and line level is line level, like synthesizers. So we're going to pick that, and when we're done, we hit bypass, and it brings us back to where we were. And the sound we have currently set up on the first mode is a bunch of simple little, almost delay micro loops. Cool. And so I'm going to sort of make up my own terminology to talk about the way the different modes work because it's the way I think of it and it's what's making the most sense to me. So the first and most important thing in any moment of using the microcosm is what mode do you have selected? And you have these 4 categories: micro loop, granules, glitch, and multi-delay. And inside of those are multiple effects: mosaic, seek, and glide for micro loop. And each one of those has 4 different modes. See which of these 4 LEDs is lit up. So this is micro loop, and then mosaic A, mosaic B, C, and D. All right, and then within these 4, mosaic A, B, C, and D, it's not like synth presets where it's the same potential sound but a different collection of knob settings. Your knob settings persist between modes until you get to the user presets. But in all the rest of these, your knob positions persist as you scroll through modes. And it's actually different behavior of the effect. So this is, for example, mosaic B. And this is mosaic C. Different, right? You can hear there's different octaves on those micro loops. So don't think of these like presets. Think of them like modes for an effect. And each of the effects is way more different than each of the modes within a given effect. Right? So there will, without a doubt, be shared behavior between A, B, and C, and D of the same effect. But between the ones in the categories, they might be totally, completely different. And that's part of why I find it really hard to teach the microcosm in any really structured way. And that's why I'm starting the video with this, how to approach the microcosm in any mode and how to control it in any mode, because they really are completely different. Okay, we're going to stay in mosaic for a lot of our demonstration here, and we'll just stay on the first one for now. But you've seen me move knobs a lot. Let me explain what these knobs are doing. I think of them as 3 sort of sections, okay? On the far right here, we're mixing between our 3 potential sound sources. On the left of mix, that is our dry signal. On the right of mix, that is our affected signal. Okay, and down here is the level of a loop for the built-in looper. I'm going to leave that on nothing right now because we're not showing it yet. And then on this left side, these 3 controls, activity, time, and repeats, change almost fundamentally what's happening with your effect. To demonstrate these 3 knobs, I'm going to use the pattern multi-delay mode, pattern A in multi-delay. It is a normal delay. And so what do you guys think time would do in a delay? If I speed it up, if I slow it way down, and I speed it up, repeats, what do you guys think if it's a delay? You can think of it like feedback. But in any mode, that will let any sound that gets caught in the effect, or caught in the buffer, or caught in a loop, whatever you want to think of it as, that sound will repeat longer and fade out over time. Really easy to demonstrate with delay. But will be relevant and is a good place to demonstrate it moving on. And activity will give you more of whatever the effect is doing. I think explaining activity doesn't work great with my delay example, but I think it was too valuable for time and repeats. Activity will make the effect do more of whatever it's doing. And that's super generic and not really good at explaining what you're hearing. But we're back in mosaic D to be specific, and I have middling repeats and activity all the way at 0. So we hear it's not exactly a delay, they're micro loops. Some of them are pitched. But if I turn up activity, we get more, and we're getting more of the ones that are pitch shifted. Okay? So repeats is how long anything that gets caught in the buffer, caught in the effect, will repeat out. Activity will make the effect do more of whatever it's doing. And time is the frequency of that. Time can be subdivisions of our tap tempo, or if the light is on the right side here, that tempo is free running. Great. We can also sync it with MIDI clock, and I am going to do that and put it back on Subdivision. So now, as I change this tempo, that light will react, and I can control the subdivisions here. That's the easiest for a lot of the other things I'm going to demonstrate. And a control that's really, really easy to forget, and I'll group it in with these first three, you can change the direction of the entire buffer. So I'll go back to my delay for that example. We'll get some repeats and some activity. Slower time. You can reverse the entire buffer. So now, the delay parts will play back, and you get there by pressing in on your mode selector. That can drastically change the sound of what you're working with. So these three plus the forward and reverse is totally changing what the effect is doing. Please don't forget about the forward and reverse. These three knobs, shape, filter, and space, are about getting whatever we cook up in the effect section to blend better with our dry section. What do I mean? I'm going to turn activity and repeats pretty far up, and I'm just going to put on a sequence from the MIDI log. Definitely sounds interesting. It's doing some cool stuff, but it's really busy. And if we want it to fill in better, us synth people know, you can put a filter over it. So if I go only the effect mix, so no dry signal right now, the filter can totally close it off. Or we can slowly take out the high end and let it sit underneath. Great. Space is a reverb. And this is increasing the mix, and all the way to the right, it's only the reverb signal. If I combine that with the filter, it's this moving, shifting ambient wash. Okay? I've changed everything a little bit to better demonstrate shape here, but we are on Mosaic B and full wet on the mix, so we're only hearing the affected signal. And listen to the way these micro loops come in. They have an amp envelope, and that amp envelope is defined by this shape. This is really a four-way switch, not a continuous knob. I kind of wish it was a continuous knob. But when we're in this first section, they come in abruptly and fade out like a sawtooth. If I'm on the triangle, they fade in and fade out. They ramp up and fade away here on the ramp. And then on the square, they come in and leave abruptly. There seems to be a little bit of release and attack on this. Again, I wish this was a continuous knob so I can make it really abrupt. But this shape knob can have a really substantial effect on the way your sounds are blending in and the way you're hearing them. And here now we're in Mosaic D with a lot of those settings used at once. So there you go. Change your effect, make it blend in, mix between your three potential sources. Now, I worry that was boring and uninteresting, okay? But I think we need that framework. So now that we know what these knobs do and we're keeping them in nice, neat sections to understand what they do, I'm going to pick a mode I don't know much about. How about warp? And I'm going to do my best to explore it. So where I want to start, 50-50 mix, loop with consideration as if you're using a loop or not. Then everything in the middle for these 3 knobs that control what the effect does. And then for the 3 that help it blend in, shape all the way to the right, filter all the way to the right, and space all the way to the left. So we're not knocking out any frequencies. We're not covering it up with reverb, and whatever grain or delay starts abruptly and we can hear it clear. Okay? And then I'll just play. And I'll wonder why I can't hear anything. And I'll go full wet mix. Slower time. Interesting. And then immediately I'll pull out the manual. Is that the right page? Yeah. And I'm going to read what it says. Delay taps are manipulated using filters and pitch shifting to create spacious textural effects. Activity controls the number of active delay taps. And so envelope controlled filter on each delay tap is mode 1. And one important thing to remember when you're exploring a new effect, go between the modes. You might find one that really connects with you, or you might understand more of what it's changing as you hear what's different about these modes. So envelope controlled filter is A, resonant bandpass filter is B. I hear it moving. Let's try the third one. C. Adds pitch shifting to delay taps. So let me just keep playing. I'm actually going to take out the mini clock for this. It seems to be better fit to be free tempo. And I'll play with it. Open the filter just so we have more for it to give us back. So really, I'm filling out this mode as a very interesting delay. And what I'm learning, what the feedback I'm taking from it, I don't want to run a sequence into this. I want to play back and I want to listen. And sort of accompany with it. I really like what that gave back to me. I really like what that became. I wrote down real bullet points for that. I'm going to read them now, but I'm going still to present that as I discovered it on my way. So, how to explore. You listen to what's happening. You don't just change the pedal settings, you change what you're putting into it, which I'm really glad that I actually did. Be comfortable freely moving between modes, which I know I mentioned. And you pay attention to these 4 lights for their sort of esoteric feedback. They will give you feedback. Where's my... I think this is like a polarized lens. Does it matter which side? Should I do this side? They give you feedback as to what you're hearing. Even if it is cryptic, there's feedback there. So to me, it looks like orange is there while there's active delays. And so there was the first and then the second. The first was an orange, the second was a lighter white. And then a really, really light one. I don't know if that'll show up. When I hold it, all orange. If I speed it up, so maybe in this mode and in some cases, those lights are going to feel kind of superficial, but they are feedback in some way. They're cryptic feedback. So I don't know how effective that is at demonstrating my point, but it was genuine. And I explored this in a mode I hadn't done, following the sort of rules that I set out. And I know it kind of loses some structure when I do it like that, but that's the reality of it, and that's the way I want to present it. Because that is, I think, the way the microcosm is asking to be worked with. That is to say, and I'll just sort of conclude with what I've been thinking now, if you want it just for making things spacey or ambient, it will do that job. I promise you it'll do a great job of that. But I think a lot of people might be better served with just a nice reverb. And these controls are a little too, what's the right word, idiosyncratic. And the modes and the effects are a little too idiosyncratic to be very accessible. And that's not a problem for me, and that's not a problem for a lot of people. But I think there's a better fitting use case than I want this to be spacey, I want this to be ambient. Either you are particularly interested in granular and you want it in effect and not in modular or anywhere other place. And I think that's a fun, exciting, new dimension of all this sound stuff that's going on. So if you're really interested in granular, yes, I think this makes sense. But more abstractly, and I think more true to what the microcosm is actually going to deliver, if you're someone who wants to explore, and I mean explore in a way that's different to really, really detailed programming, really, really detailed tweaking. If you're wanting to explore in a way that unexpected sounds come back, in a way that sounds are almost suggested to you, you want to be surprised by what comes back, given the sounds you play into this strange little world, this microcosm, that's perfect. And that's, I'll call back to the very, very beginning. The other way I interpret the name, microcosm, this is really a little world. There is so much to find and so much to explore in here. So if that's what you're after, then I think the microcosm is perfect. It is an explorer's pedal. So my whole premise, I guess, back to the title in the very beginning, how do you actually use the microcosm? You understand the controls, you grab the manual, and you explore. So there you go. My name's Jorb. I love gear. That includes microcosm. Big help to the Mini-Log, something I'm still a big fan of as well. The microcosm will come back up if I get another good idea. So if there's anything you want to learn, ask me specifically, and we can do that. I'm Jorb. I love gear. Thanks for watching. Cheers. So long.